Good morning, guys. It's match day. It is Rangers Europa League Thursday night again. And look, I think, these Thursday nights have not been the Thursday nights we've been used to, have they? If you go back across Rangers Europa League history, we've certainly had better nights than we've had in recent weeks and recent months. It's not certainly been a campaign to remember in the Europa League, but a game against a historic name. Ferencváros from the past. I mean, look, Ferencváros are not a European giant. Let's not get this out of context. Look, they're not a Roma, they're not a Porto, they're not a Forest. They're not a Villa. They're not any of those big teams in the Europa League, but they're still a historic name, a name to be respected, with a connection to our Glasgow City rivals, to our old firm rivals. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly. We're also going to talk about a defender who is out of contract at the end of the season. No, not James Tavernier. Hopefully he is on his way at the end of the season, off into the sunset. Hopefully we're closing the door firmly on him before the end of the season. About another Scottish international defender. We'll talk a little bit about him and kind of the issues around him and what we should do about that. We'll also look ahead to tonight's game as well. Talk a little bit and talk about a defender who could be back tonight, a man who I'm very excited to see back. A defender who can do not only the defensive work but can do attacking work, can do midfield work, and probably could do the CEO's job if he was pushed, I would imagine, as well. We'll talk a little bit of him as well. But guys, remember, if you've just found the channel, if you're a Rangers fan, you want free content, we don't charge you. We don't hide stuff behind paywalls. We don't hide stuff behind members only streams or shit like that. We give you it for nothing. All you got to do is subscribe, ring the bell, and you get it for nothing. Look, I will never ever hide stuff behind pay tiers or stuff like that. To me, that's wrong. A fan shouldn't have to pay for their content. It's wrong. If you want to support the channel, great. Become a member, obviously, to support the channel. Super thanks button to donate. That's great. That's wonderful. Look, the problem at the moment is I am on a situation where making videos is exceptionally hard. Having to work a lot of hours to meet bills and things like that. So unfortunately, this is taking a bit of a backseat at the moment because of the situation. But it is what it is, guys. It is what it is. Look, I can't do what the Rabble do. I can't do what Heart and Hand do because I just don't have the money to do it. I'm not some wealthy YouTuber. Right, guys, let's talk a little bit about this man. Let's talk about John Souttar as the microphone decides to finally work. John Souttar, look, I like John Souttar. I know he has a mistake in him. I get that. And I know that's a criticism that is often levelled at John Souttar, is the mistakes that he makes, that he has an error in him. And I think, there's got to be a little bit of context, a little bit of a bite of reality here from fans. All the defenders we have a mistake in them. Some more than others. I mean, let's face it, James Tavernier, who's worshipped by his fanboys, is Mr. Mistake at the back, isn't he? I mean, the number of goals that man gives away is incredible. Max Aarons gives away goals. Nasajiga has given away, I think, at least a goal a game. Cornelius has a mistake in him. Magoma has a mistake in him. And Ciala has a mistake. They all have mistakes in them. Now, look, we're lucky. I think we're exceptionally lucky as fans that we've grown up. So those of you who are a certain vintage to remember Terry Butcher, probably one of the greatest defenders ever to play the game. He in the British game, he was captain of England. He captained England at 2 World Cups. He was an absolute Rangers legend. Richard Gough, absolute legend. Lorenzo Amoruso, absolute legend. The name list goes on. These are the players that I certainly remember playing back in the day. And I'm sure you can name a whole load more, but I'll be honest with you guys, the days of us being able to sign and have the likes of a Richard Gough or a Terry Butcher or a Lorenzo Amoruso are well and truly gone now. If you kind of look at similarities these days between those players that we had previously and players now, if you were looking at, let's say, a Terry Butcher, you'd be looking at someone, like, say, a John Stones, for example, and then you're looking at, 70, 80, 90 million pounds for a player. You're looking at Lorenzo Amoruso, you're looking at like Bastoni, who currently plays for Inter Milan. You're looking between 85 and 100 million pounds for a player. Richard Gough, again, absolute high quality player, top level talent. Again, you'd be looking at 60, 70 million pounds for Richard Gough these days. This is money that Rangers don't have, and I don't think ever will have ever again, because the Scottish game doesn't generate that amount of revenue. It just doesn't, and I don't think it ever will again. The big thing that we have is we have a, and I hate using this word, we have a lower quality product, don't we? We have a lower quality product than south of the border. You look at south of the border, they have all the money, they have all the teams, they have the higher quality product, and that's what brings people to Britain. It is the English Premier League, is the English Championship, unfortunately. So we're going to be shopping in a market that is full of John Soutars, Derek Cornelius's, Nasser Jigas, and yes, we may, along the way with the transfer trading model, find a young player who eventually becomes a Amoruso, a Butcher, a Gough, that sort of quality. But rest assured, he won't be at Rangers for long. And as much as that pains me to say it, we deal in a reality where these players, once they become good players, quality players, teams from down south will look, teams from across the continent will look. It is what it is. Now, John Souttar, like I said, has a mistake in him. I get that. I understand that. But Souttar, for me, is a defender who I think can do a decent job for Rangers going forward. And we've got to deal in this reality that we're not going to get another Butcher, another Amoruso. And I understand fans going, he's pish, get rid of him, blah, blah, blah. He's not good enough. He's not in Rangers class. Unfortunately, guys, that's where we are now. We're not in that category anymore. Souttar is a player who puts his body on the line, who throws himself in the way of shots, who blocks, who is quite decent actually at bringing the ball out from the back. He's decent at breaking the lines in what he does. He's a good footballer. He's certainly not a world-class footballer. He's certainly not an outstanding footballer, but he's not a terrible footballer. Now, he's out of contract at the end of the season. Now, for me, there is talk that there is a contract on the table for John Souttar to sign. Now, I would certainly be looking at that and giving him a new contract. We can't afford to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't afford a situation where at the end of this season, we have virtually no one under contract left at the club in the defensive area. You look at the situation there at the back amongst Rangers defenders. Nsiala's under contract, Sterling's under contract, Magoma's not. He's on loan. He'll go back to Brentford. Aarons will go back to Bournemouth. Tavernier hopefully will leave. Giga hopefully will. His contract, he's on loan. He will go back to Wolves hopefully. Cornelius is also on loan, may not remain. Fernandez will stay. So, we can't have a situation where we're completely throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We just don't have the funds or the ability to pull in, I think, the players we need. And we really can't afford another summer of just complete rebuild and complete remake and complete of trying to re-gel another team. It just isn't practicable anymore. So for me, I think giving Souttar a new contract is very wise. Now, whether that contract is what John Souttar is looking for is another matter. It may be that the contract that Rangers put on the table for him isn't acceptable to him and that he's looking for more or more guarantees. Now, the only thing I would say to John Souttar is, given your injury history this year and your dips in form, mate, I wouldn't be pushing my luck. So, I get the injury things, I get the mistake in him, but the problem is, guys, we've got to kind of deal in the reality of the world we live in, not in the world we'd like to live in. And I think a new contract for John Souttar, for me, would be a very good move for the club. And, Danny Rule has spoken about John Souttar. Danny Rule quite clearly has a high regard for John Souttar. He talked about the desire to make John one of the leadership group, to make him a continuing part of the leadership group. And we've actually seen John captain the team on a number of occasions. I mean, I like a centre-half as a captain. I'm not saying this is a long-term solution for Rangers, but, he clearly is someone that Danny Rule rates, that Danny Rule believes has a part to play, and we've got to respect the manager's desires, the manager's wishes on this one. And I think Danny's kind of shown us over recent weeks and recent games that he is a man to be trusted. He is a man that if we give him, some funds, if we give him the ability to shape this team, he can move Rangers forward. And look, at the end of the day, I'm sure you would agree with me, all we want is a Rangers moving forward, is a Rangers making progress, is a Rangers being competitive domestically and in Europe. And I believe that Danny can do that. So guys, please let me know your thoughts on this John Souttar contract situation. Right, let's turn our let's turn our attention to tonight's game and tonight's opponents. Now, Rangers obviously have a number of issues. They have a number of injuries. Bayrami obviously is not in the squad. Obviously, Souttar and Cornelius continue to be absent due to injury. Which I think, when you're out looking for a new contract, it's not the best look in the world. Nasser Giga obviously as well will be heading off to AFCON. No great loss there, in my opinion. But he obviously is here for the short term. Mo Diamonde is suspended. So, the manager has a number of very interesting selection decisions to make tonight ahead of the game. Now, Danny Rule spoke about the situation, and he spoke about one player in particular at his presser yesterday. This is what Danny had to say. He says, normally when you arrive, you see players on the training pitch, but with Dujon Sterling, he wasn't at that stage of his recovery. He's been working hard, it's been a long injury, and it's now getting him minutes on the pitch. Of course, we have an issue with the centre-backs at the moment, so having him back and available on the bench will help. So it sounds like Duj will not start. It sounds like Danny sees Dujon Sterling as possibly being a centre-back. Now, I'm still firmly of the belief that Dujon Sterling is the best right-back at the club, defensively. Sorry, those of you who are big James Tavernier fans, he isn't in the same class as Dujon Sterling defensively. He never has been, never will be. But having Sterling back, I think, is a huge boost. Now, look, I understand Sterling's drawbacks. He is injury prone in the extreme. And, Danny Rule and his staff have got to find a solution to this issue if Dujon Sterling is to have any future at the club. Now, I really hope they can. Because no matter what you think of Sterling on the injury side of it, nobody can deny that when he plays for the club, he brings a value to the club. He brings a quality to the club. Whether that's playing as a defensive central midfielder, as he did for Philippe Clement last season, and he was excellent in that role. Whether that's playing as a centre-back or part of a back three, or as a wing-back or as a right-back, he can fill in a number of roles. He is realistically the modern hybrid defender, isn't he? He's the modern hybrid player who can play in a number of different positions. That modern hybrid player is what a lot of clubs want now. Someone who can do a multitude of jobs. No longer is the statement "jack of all trades, master of none" an insult. It is now a jack of all trades, master of a few. I think is applicable to Dujon, and having Dujon back is a big lift for this club. Now, look, it looks like he won't start tonight, which I see. I understand. The guy's just come back from injury. You realistically don't want to be throwing someone who's not match sharp straight into the heat of the battle. You want to give him 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there to bring him back up to speed and get him going. And I'm sure Danny will manage that recovery. But look, for me, Dujon being back, huge lift, massive positive, and hopefully he's a player who can come in and actually help Rangers going forward. I think tonight we're going to probably looking at a back three, or if it is a back four, it'll be Fernandez and Giga, I think, at the back. If it's a back three, I think it could be Tav, Fernandez and Giga as a back three. I think that could be the options that Danny looks at tonight. Just please don't play Chimiti, Danny. Please don't play Chimiti. Look, our opponents, Our opponents, Ferencváros, are currently top of the Hungarian league, whatever it's called. And yes, they are managed by Robbie Keane, former Coventry, former Wolves, former Liverpool, former Tottenham, former Celtic, the guy's had more clubs than Tiger Woods. He genuinely has. I look at his list last night of clubs that he's played for. It's huge. Honestly, it is massive how many clubs this man has played for in his career. Look, just to kind of hit you up a little bit on this one. He's played for Wolves, Coventry, Inter Milan. He was a disaster there. Leeds twice, loan and permanent. Spurs, Liverpool, back to Spurs again. Celtic on loan, West Ham on loan, LA Galaxy, Aston Villa on loan, ATK, whoever they are. I thought they were a pop band. There we go. He's also had 146 caps for his country. He's been manager of ATK and Maccabi Tel Aviv. Well, that was fun. ATK, Atletico de Cuco, it's an Indian team. Is that a cricket team or is that a football team? I don't know. That's not racist, guys. I can make that joke. My girlfriend is Indian. Ferencváros are top of their league by 2 points from Győr. There's also Debrecen, Pax, Puskás, whatever, Kisvárda. MTK Budapest, about the only team I've heard of in that league. Look, fair enough. Fair play to them. They're top of their league. They're doing quite well this season. They've won 9, drawn 4, lost 3 this season. Decent record. Pretty decent team. Yeah, not bad. I mean, their Europa League record, here it is. It's mixed. It is mixed. Look, I'm not going to pretend that I know a great deal about Ferencváros. I'm not going to sit here this morning, whenever you're picking up this video, and then pretend to be a Ferencváros expert, because I don't know much about Hungarian football, because I will level with you. I don't watch a lot of Hungarian football, as I imagine not many of us do watch a lot of Hungarian football. Realistically, I don't think it's something we would do. It's not a league that is big, is it? But yeah, I mean, look at this. We draw with Plitzen, who we hammered. They beat Genk away. I mean, that is a result to respect. Obviously, we were beaten by Genk, but then that was at a point where we were being pretty much beaten by everybody. So I don't really think that's a massive recommendation. They won away at Salzburg, which is a good result. They won 3-1 at home to Ludogorets, and they drew away to Fenerbahce as well. So look, they're doing quite well. They're doing all right. They're not a bad side. Robbie Keane's obviously got them playing quite well. He's got them doing some decent stuff. So this ain't going to be an easy game, is it? It's not going to be a game that we kind of look at and go, oh, easy 3 points coming up here. I mean, in terms of where they are, they're 6th currently in the Europa League, unbeaten in the Europa League, as you can see from the results. Played 5, won 3, drawn 2, scored 9, conceded 5, positive 4 goal difference. Whereas at this moment in time, Rangers currently sit 33rd, which is pretty bad, 1 point only. Which is 5 off Bâle in 24th in the last of the qualification in the playoff spots. So we've got to definitely pick this up over the next few games. In terms of their players, who they've got, look, like I said, no expert. Naby Keita is a decent player on loan from Werder Bremen. Arzani, Australian international. Peksic, Serbian international. I'm a quick flick through these results here. Their vice captain is someone called Barnabas Varga. What a quality name that is, Barnabas Varga. They've got, I mean, like I said, I don't really know a lot of their players. They've got a player on loan from Eintracht Frankfurt called Listes. They've got a player called Lenny Joseph, who's French, apparently. There we go. Like I said, I don't know a great deal about them, but they look a decent side. They look a team that are basically no mugs. It's going to be an exceptionally tough game tonight. And look, at the end of the day, Rangers will need to be on their best form. They will need to be combative in midfield. They will need to be positive and aggressive in the press. And they'll need to move the ball as quickly as possible, to be as attacking as possible, to get at this team as much as possible. Any team is get-atable. Whether it's Real Madrid, as we saw last night when Manchester City beat them, Inter Milan, who hadn't lost at home in 3 years, against Liverpool the other night, whether it's Leverkusen or against Newcastle, whoever, any team is get-atable. Any team is beatable, and I want to wish Roma all the best for tonight, by the way, whilst I remember. But look, it is going to be tough. And I think, whatever team Danny picks tonight will have to play at its very, very best. And the big concern, obviously, going forward, it is Rangers players at this moment in time. There are a number of players who, are not good enough to play for the team, but are having to be played because of the fact we don't have anyone else. There is a lack of talent, a lack of quality in certain positions. Obviously, Bayrami can't play tonight. Lyle Cameron apparently has fitness concerns. Quite how someone can develop fitness concerns having not played is well beyond me on that one. I mean, seriously, I don't know. Maybe he's been, I don't know. Maybe he's got splinters in his arse, or maybe he's got cramp from sitting on the bench for 2. I don't know. It could be anything. So, it looks like Thelo Asgard might play a role, which I don't think is great, because Asgard, for me, is just not a footballer. I hope to God that Danny Rule plays Bojan Miovski tonight. Miovski, his confidence will be sky high after the weekend, had 2 very well taken goals. Tonight, if he leaves him out and plays Chimiti, I think you have a situation where you really do knock his confidence. Why would you take a player out of this team who's scoring goals and bring in a player who couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo? Quite frankly, Chimiti is just absolute garbage, isn't he? So, realistically, I'd love to see, obviously, Miovski continue to start. The wide positions. I think, Mikey Moore obviously stands a good chance of playing tonight. Look, I slaughtered Mikey Moore at the start of the season. I was wrong. Hold my hands up. The guys look really good. I think a lot of it was down to the fact of how Russell Martin used him. I think he was another player who was a victim of the Russell Martin curse, the virus that was Martinism. So I think he's obviously come good. Positively, maybe move Mikey Moore into the more advanced role behind the front 3. Go with something like that, or behind the 2. I don't know. Go with that. Give Mikey Moore more of an advanced role. The guy scored, well, pretty much did score 2 goals at the weekend. I know one was disallowed wrongly, in my opinion. But yeah, give Mikey Moore the keys to the engine. I don't know, it's something different, but Asgard just does not excite me at all. I think Gassama's got to play as much as his form has been mixed of recent times. Finley Curtis, I would start as well. Obviously, Ant-Man is out. So, Barami out, Ant-Man out. There's a lot of injuries at the moment at the squad, and that's a concern that this injury bug seems to be coming back to the club and something that Danny Rule is going to have to solve. In terms of that team tonight, it's going to be really fascinating to see how we line up, how the manager approaches this game tonight in terms of that lineup. I would give Finley Curtis a start for certain. I'd give Gassama a start. I'd give Miovski a start. I'd go with Moore and Raskin. And I'd play Barron for definitely. I think Barron does need to start. I thought Barron looked excellent at the weekend again. Barron's quality. He really is a good footballer in terms of the fact that he does the ugly things. And I think, look, Barron's not a guy who's going to score you a shit ton of goals. He's not a player who's going to dribble past 5 players. But he's going to do the dirty work. He's going to do the in-the-trenches work. He's going to do the stuff that you need. Look, for every superstar footballer, for every guy who can run at a team and beat 5 and score a wonder goal, you need someone who is a trench digger, someone who is a muck shoveler, someone who is a biter, someone who is a fighter. And Barron is that man. And like I said, I think Connor's really come good under Danny Rule, and Danny's getting the best out of Connor. So for me, I would put Connor Barron in for definite. Raskan obviously will start, I think, as well. And there's obviously a continuing swirling interest around Nico Raskan. Besiktas reportedly interested in him. I mean, it's the Turkish media. Let's take that with a massive pinch of salt, sugar, and every other bit of condiments you can think of, because it's the Turkish media. Right, guys, look, your thoughts about tonight. I think it's going to be tough. I think, look, you've got a heart and head situation here. Heart says 3-1 Rangers. Head says I'd take a 1-1 at this point, or take a draw. I don't think we progress from the Europa League, and I don't think that's important at the moment. What I think is important for me is domestically, getting back on track domestically, making progress domestically, doing well in the Scottish FA Cup. That is my priority now. This season, that's the way I look at this season. And it's about getting January out of the way, bringing in some players, starting to gel this team to do well in the league, to progress and probably, hopefully win the Scottish Cup, and then take it into next season. I think the Europa League has to take somewhat of a back seat at this point in time. I think it's kind of like trying to resuscitate a corpse. I think, it's a bit of an impossible job. It's not going to happen unless you're some sort of wizard, or you can bring people back from the dead, which is very hard to do and very ugly and horrible, apparently, according to Dia del Muertos. So, guys, let me know your thoughts on the game tonight. As always, guys, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully get back things on track. Thanks for watching, guys. I will catch you on the next one.